should say committee of
Oh,
special, just in case.
Yep. Yep. Good to go.
Well, there you go. Keep that one.
Marty. Are we good to go? Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting of February 12th, 2024. I now call the meeting to order. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the Committee of the Whole meeting of February 12th, 2024? Councillor Popoff, Councillor Bassett, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We have pardon me, only one item of business today. It's a presentation from our consultant, Justin Rousseau of Expedition Management Consulting, who is going to lead us through the Recreation and Culture Service Review session. First off, I'll ask Trevor, our Director of Recreation and Culture, to provide a couple of opening remarks. Trevor?
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for taking this afternoon to meet with the Recreation and Culture team. In 2022, the Recreation and Culture Department brought forth the idea of a department service review to Council. The review is to focus on core areas of staffing, community programming, special events, fees, charges, and shared opportunities, such as with the RDEK. The report will help us look at items such as service levels within our capacity and how they align with industry standards, guidance on new opportunities, trends, community expectations, staffing models, and programs and service opportunities. A key deliverable will be a work plan, which will include specific actions, capital and resource cost requirements, staff resource requirements, and key performance indicators to guide a 5-year transition. Over the last few years, we've had a number of discussions with Council concerning the high cost of recreation services. This session with Council is intended to discuss any specific concerns or outcomes that Council feels should be factored into the review outcomes. After securing funding, developing a project plan, and issuing RFP, we are here today with Expedition Management Consulting. Expedition, Justin, beside me, is here to lead a discussion.
Thank you, Trevor. And Justin, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Trevor. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Pleased to be here today and speaking with you about innovation and a review of the recreation and service in your community. I'm just going to take a few minutes here and go through a few slides just to get us all on the same page. And we'll spend a few minutes in introducing our team that's working in behind the scenes that I'm representing today, as well as provide an overview of the project, and then obviously an opportunity for us to have a discussion. So a little bit about our group. We are a specialist in recreation, parks, and culture, and we've done many reviews for rec departments in Western Canada and beyond. And as I mentioned, I'm representing the team today. We've got a host of people in behind the scenes that are working on your behalf as well. I think we've got 7 people with rec degrees and various levels of operational experience. I myself actually have over 15 years of management experience in rec facilities, and the company, the management consulting company, has been operational for over 15 years too. So we bring some of that outside expertise coming in, but we really want to tap into your internal expertise here today and with your staff, and they've done an excellent job of showing me around today and giving us a sense of where the opportunities are and where some of the challenges are. So the overall deliverable of the project is to review the City of Cranbrook's recreation and culture services to identify ways these services can be further delivered in an effective and an efficient way. So it's about that effectiveness, efficientness, and also innovation. We are currently in the community engagement phase of the overall project, and so there is a variety of different activities that are happening, which I'll speak to in a later slide. We'll take that information that we're able to gather through that process into phase 3, which is the analysis phase, the draft report, and final report. When we go to the public, we want to make sure that we're really clear about what level of engagement we're seeking. And in this project, we're seeking in the involved level. And our goal is to work directly with the public to ensure their concerns and aspirations are considered. We want to make sure that public input is directly reflected in the report, but we're also clear that decision-making responsibility rests with council. So as I mentioned, there are a variety of different activities going on right now. There's a public survey that's open until March 1st, and there was, last count was 370 some responses. So pretty strong, not only the quantity, but also the quality of the responses. Lots of open-ended stuff. We're gonna have lots of coding to do on our group, with our group, to taking some of those comments and consolidating them, making sense of them. There's also 2 community input workshops coming up on the 21st and 27th. We've opened it up to the public to email us or call us if they can't make a meeting, or don't feel comfortable filling out a survey. So really want to make sure it's an open process where if somebody wants to speak with us or send us an email, they can do that. So we've made that opportunity available. We'll also be speaking with the Rec and Culture Department staff through a survey. So we've got a survey that's live right now. The input workshop today with council, various tours and operator discussions and interviews. So other inputs that are going into the process include a review of your service delivery and your community programming, what's working, not what's could use some improvement, and how are folks feeling about that from a resident point of view. An organizational analysis, looking at how you are currently operating and ways to potentially improve that, as well as a review of the staffing was an important part of the process. Review of your current special event delivery processes and opportunities, as well as your fees and charges review, which we're currently working on to make sure we have that as a foundational piece here coming up in the short term. A strategic partnership analysis, so looking at, as Trevor was alluding to there, other potential partners in service delivery, and then how are you going to measure success in the short, medium, and long term, all those performance measures. So the result of all this will be a clear and useful and defensible document that you can use for decision making in the future. Next steps will be to complete the engagement process, further develop the research and analysis phase, and then the draft report. So with that, before we get into any questions that I had for you today, did you have any questions about the process or the project?
Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Hi, Justin. So whenever we do surveys, we're seeking public input. I'm sure you're doing it, but just to double check, the widest range of accessibility to all the public, not just those that use the facilities. We'll get a broader perspective. I did do the survey, and they're talking about cost effectiveness. And I think for people that are not using our services, they're probably going to suggest it's on one side of the spectrum. So what's our, I don't need to know what, but are we doing a wide public outreach, a couple of meetings, but also on Facebook? But what's the broader outreach that someone at Tamarack Mall might have access to that doesn't have any of those other access points?
So in terms of the engagement touch points, those are the ones that we described, the 2 surveys, the public survey, the staff survey, the 2 sessions, as well as interviews, and an open offer to speak with the consultant team or to receive email feedback. So there isn't like an in-person open house, I think is what you might be describing.
So after the fact, we'll see the response demographics and is it going to say, how many users or how many responders use one or more of our services and facilities versus never use the facilities? Will we have that?
Yes.
Graphic?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Thank you. I wonder, when we're engaging with the community, for some folks, or a lot of folks maybe, might not actually have a clear picture of what the full scope is of what our Recreation and Culture Department does. So for myself, for example, I went to our website to look at the Recreation and Culture page. And so I'm wondering if in our survey or as we're engaging with folks, if there's a way to provide that sort of introduction about, hey, this is what we currently do. Because some people might just think, like me, I play hockey.
Right.
That's probably, I think, my main use, other than maybe parks, of our Recreation and Culture Department. But, to have that full list of, it's parks, it's open spaces, it's special events, it's swimming, you know what I mean? It just might be helpful to have that as an intro, so everybody starts from the same place of oh, okay, yeah, right. I didn't quite realize that's all the stuff our department currently does. Because otherwise people might just come at some of these surveys just with the very narrow lens of what they use.
Right. There might be an opportunity in the preamble to the survey to describe that a little more, as well as potentially on the website. We could speak with the staff about that. So that's good feedback. We'll take a second look at that intro and see if it describes that well enough. And if it doesn't, it might be worthwhile doing that. Thank you.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Just curious, with the study that's being done, will there be comparables to how Cranbrook compares with our user fees compared to other similar sized communities?
Yes, there will be. Comparative analysis is an important input to this. So that work is currently actually underway. So that'll be one of the things, those foundational pieces.
Councillor Bassett, anything? No? Okay, back to you, Justin. Oh, sorry. Councillor Pop.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor. Just one more. At the end of all this, will we have a cost breakdown, operations, maintenance, utilities, infrastructure, replacement for our services and facilities? Is that going to be part of it? Because that's what comes up at budget time. Well, we don't know what we don't know. How much does it cost to run all these things, and not just staffing, but all total costs? Is that going to be in this report at some point?
If you could speak a little bit to that, Trevor.
Mayor Price, through to Councillor Popoff. So the review will have a general overview of facilities, but it won't go in depth into the facilities. So the capital cost of upkeeping our rec and culture facilities will not be specifically part of this. That'll come through our asset management program, but this is more about what we can do with what we have.
Councillor Bassett.
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the things that Councillor Graham always brings up is to get an idea of how much it costs to put somebody on the ice, swimming in the pool. Will we have an idea of that? Or do we have an idea of that?
As part of the scope, there will be some analysis on that.
Okay.
So we're landing on what that end deliverable really will be, but there has been discussions about making sure that there's at least some level of analysis as to what the cost per user is.
Sure, because that could inform us on then what our charges are and going from there. Okay, thank you.
Good. Anything else? Good. Back to you, Justin.
Okay, thank you. Can we get the presentation back up there? So we have 3 questions for you today. The first one, what are your future aspirations for recreation and culture services delivered by the City of Cranbrook? What will success look like in 5 years and 10 years? I'm going to go through all 3 just so you can kind of process this a little bit and see where we're going with this. The second one is around user pay versus tax support. So the question is, recreation and culture services provided by the city can generate significant community benefits. These services are supported by property tax revenue in order to keep user fees low enough to encourage participation. So it's that community benefit. Please indicate where you think the city should land in terms of paying for services through property taxes or user fees. And so just kind of getting a sense on that one, where we're landing. And then the last one, if recreation culture services review could achieve one thing, what do you think it should be? So that's just kind of your last kick at the cat here with question 3 to kind of focus in on. So again, question 1, future aspirations and what will success look like? Kind of helps us as we go through this process to get a sense of where you think things are going.
Anyone want to take a kick at that? Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. So some of the things that I jotted down that I'd like to see is more free, accessible sport facilities. So like a boarded outdoor skating rink is one thing that we currently don't have. There's been talks about expanding the skateboard park, and I think that plan is still underway. Basketball courts, bike parks, bike trails, basically things to keep the community active for our people that live here that don't play organized sports.
So that spontaneous use, drop in, just part of everyday life kind of stuff.
Councillor Bissett.
Thank you. When I think about what I would like to see recreation and culture look like, I think well-maintained facilities is important. And so whatever facilities we have as the city, they need to be well-maintained. And we're better off to concentrate on a few and do it well, rather than be spread too thin and have them half falling apart kind of thing. So I think that's something to focus on. Sometimes I think when I first started doing the survey, I was caught up in recreation. And then I'm like, oh yeah, all those concerts and all that aspect of things. And certainly having a variety of shows coming through Cranbrook. I mean, one of the things I realized when I moved away is we actually have a lot more cultural events for our size of community because we are isolated. And that is a real bonus for living in Cranbrook, that they are accessible, not hard to get tickets for. And that's a real bonus for our community. So I think maintaining that variety and as much as possible. I know it's been tough after COVID getting shows to come through, but I think that's a priority for our community because it also brings in others to our community as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bissett. Councillor Ray and Councillor Papa.
Thank you. Some of my thoughts do cross over to asset management, so I appreciate that that's an initiative that's kind of running in parallel, but I'll just mention them here because I do think there is crossover. So one of the things I'm hoping we can do is really initiate long-term planning and visioning. And that does cross over partly to facilities and asset management around, what are the lifespans for our current facilities? And let's us start that work now of what's next. Because when we look back a decade or several decades, we wish somebody would have done that then. So let's us do that now, to start having those discussions, to be proactive about, hey, you know what? Our facilities are not going to last forever. What's our plan? And what does that look like? And along with that, and again, it crossover with asset management, is, what are the potential funding and governance models? Lots of communities are looking at their aging facilities. Do we have opportunities to work together? And if we look at sharing funding, that might also mean sharing governance, which can have its own challenges. But I'm really hoping we can move the ball forward in terms of this long-term planning and visioning. And I think that'd be a real gift to give our community to really start that process. In terms of what success looks like, I think we're doing this already, but to really help define what is our niche. We don't want to be duplicating with the private sector. We've got nonprofits that are doing a great job, KISA with soccer, curling rink, minor hockey ball, you know what I mean? So we appreciate when there's sports-specific nonprofits that are doing a great job. So we probably, if we don't need to be duplicating something that's already happening, right? We probably wouldn't want to do that. And then school sports as well. So how do we find our niche? And is part of it around affordability, broad public access, safety? I mean, the swimming pool is a unique resource and very important to teach water safety. So I think, that's probably one of those, part of that niche that we want to fit into. Yeah, so really trying to define what is our lane, how can we be most effective, and how can we really help our community start to create a long-term plan and a long-term vision.
Councilor Papa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So 2 comments. The first comment is we can't be everything to everyone. So if we're coming up with programs that, wouldn't it be nice to do this or this or this, it has to make sense that we're not just doing something for the 1 or 2 people that want to, I'll use an example, I don't even know if it's true, but want to go swimming at 6 o'clock in the morning and only 2 people show up. Staffing and everything else may not make sense to do something if it's just for the 1% or the very few, and we're not maximizing our potential. So if we're doing programming and we're not seeing what the minimum number should be to participate in different programming activities that we're directly responsible for, revise it, cancel it. I mean, there's a cost associated with that I think the taxpayer would like to see made more effective. And secondly, and I've had this conversation with Trevor, how can we as a city in the long range work with, help, support, enable our other community events, cultural organizations in our community that's not city operated or owned, but like KISA, like other organizations, how can we help them to be more successful, especially if they're creating events that bring in economic development into our community? That's another big piece. And if we can measure that, that has some importance as well. So I know we're, staffing and getting up to speed still but I think that's something we should be aspirational towards in the short and long term. How can we help support these organizations?
Thank you, Councilor Papa. I have a couple of thoughts. I totally agree with Councilor Bissett. We have to maintain what we have, priority 1. That's through the asset management, just on day-to-day maintenance as well. You go to some communities and you can look at a 25-year-old facility and it still looks new. You can go into other communities and you're into a 5-year-old facility and, there's not a lot of doesn't appear to be a whole lot of community pride there when you walk into those places. So I think that's that whole appearance first look, keep the paint up, things like that on top of the asset management side of it. And on the cultural side, certainly, I think we're in a good situation right now, positioned very well to maybe have an identity. We don't really have an identity as far as culture and even sports. I think our identity of being a hockey town, that's kind of shifted offward, but I think we've got a real opportunity for a cultural identity, maybe the concert capital of the Kootenays. It's simple, but you know what? It's the Kootenays. I've been to a couple of concerts recently at the Key City, and I'm going to tell you, last time I was there, I think I knew 8 people in there, and it was packed, full house, right? Ran into a couple of them after the concert, out for a pop, and most of them from out of town. It's amazing how many are coming in from the Kootenays. So, and it's a good draw. So, I think we could be working with business in town as well. We don't want to be like Seattle, certainly when the Blue Jays play, that's the most expensive weekend, for rooms and everything else. They jack them up. Maybe we could price ours down a little bit on certain things and, give them good value. So I think good values and, so I think that's important. And I really think an identity's got to be there. Since I was young, I'm not that young anymore. Kamloops, the tournament capital of Canada, not just BC, of Canada. Well, they got a reputation for it. And anytime there was a tournament in Kamloops, they're coming from all over North America, so it's interesting. And then again, I think we need to look at maybe at private-public partnerships. We've got a Moyer Park up there that's got, I don't know how many acres we have up there, but I'm sure there could be a piece where we start adding on to the fields, and we could be looking at, say, the gymnastics club. They're looking for a home. They're the largest participant organization in Cranbrook. And here they are out having to rent, this facility, that. And it's really sad, they don't really have a permanent home. They're prepared. I think some of these organizations are prepared to fundraise, build their own building. I think we could have a win there. We've got, because if you look at it, it's sport Cranbrook in general once we get them on there. We offer them the land or a reduced price on the land, but I'd say give them the land. If they're going to build sport facilities or recreation facilities are benefiting our community, why wouldn't we? Gift them the land. It's up to them to maintain everything, roads in, roads out. We're not paying for plowing, things like that in the winter. So I think it's a win all the way around. I think there's other organizations would jump on, and we could have this little private-public section up there that is attached to ours. Pickleball, they're looking for a home. They'll raise their own money. I mean, hey, here's your space. It's right adjacent to this, and there could be multi-use stuff up there as well. So I think we have to look longer term, because looking at the budget, I can almost guarantee you, we don't have the ability to be building any more facilities, no matter how meager they are, in the next 5 to 10 years for sure. We just can't afford that. So do we want, if we want to grow our sports and grow our organizations in town, I think that the private sector is the way to do it, and we play a role in that. So just my thoughts there.
Thank
Further?
you.
Councilor Passat.
Thank you. Just to add on to that, oftentimes I think the city can really benefit by just supporting the groups that are working on this. They sometimes need a little bit of extra help from us. They don't need us to take over. And I think that can be our role. Like I think of the curling club that way, because certainly, they do need help with some of the facility, like some of the machinery and things like that, the chiller and stuff. But generally they're running it, and they're doing all the, special events there and fundraising and that. So it's a small amount that the city's involved. And it's the same as you were mentioning, Councillor Popoff was mentioning with KISA. KISA's doing 95% of the work. And then the city chimes in with a little bit of funding here and there to help out. Or as you were saying, maybe we can do that with the gymnastics club. So I think as a city, we can get a lot more benefit from working with these groups and with less taxpayer input. I mean, we have our arenas still. We have Western Financial Place, which are big ticket items. But we can certainly accommodate a lot of our community by helping those other user groups and sort of being, just their backup. Just a thought.
We good?
So,
Thank you.
so I
Thank
think
you.
I did hear a few themes there, working with community groups, obviously several commented on that. So when we look to the future, there might be an opportunity to maybe expand upon what you're doing now in terms of in that facilitative role in helping groups and leveraging funds and leveraging human resources. Would that be fair to say? Okay. And then maintenance, I heard at least a couple times. And it is the sense that in the future that the maintenance level could be higher, or what's our feel on the current maintenance level?
You know what? I think it depends on what staffing availability we've got over the last number of years. Staffing's been an issue, certainly. If we look at our buildings, that's one thing, but I look at our parks from time to time, they can be, they can look like a carpet out there, one week, and, the next week, you drive by a public field, and, when there's weeds growing and the grass is like that, that's not very appealing, whether it's being used or not, right? So, and again, maybe we have to look. And I don't know, I don't have kids involved anymore. When you've got kids, you're sort of on top of the different facilities. Maybe there's parks that don't need to be sports parks anymore. Maybe we should be shifting and I don't know how much Moyer Park is used, but if that was the theme a number of years ago, that's going to be our kind of like MacArthur Island, in Kamloops, everything's over on the island over there. Yeah. And to say, well, this isn't, it doesn't have this and doesn't have this right now. Well, maybe not right now, but if we invest in that, and that's going to be our main area, I think the days of having stuff scattered all over the place is almost gone, And so maybe we could look at maybe taking some of those the ones that aren't being utilized properly and convert them to housing. Housing lots. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments on this question number 1?
Just further to what the mayor was talking about, one of our issues, if you may be aware of it, is that Moyer Park is out there for most of us. Most of the city focuses on the other side of the world. And we do have a lot, our central facilities are at, Western Financial Place, Memorial Arena, the baseball diamonds that are in town. And the community has a fair bit of attachment to that. There isn't, at this point, to my knowledge, the attachment to the Moyer Park area, less so. We have had discussions at this table, certainly when it came to the Kisa Dome, about the merits of a centralized facility versus Moyer Park. And certainly to my knowledge, the community was very much behind centralizing facilities. Because also our schools are central too. There's no schools out by Moyer Park. And maintaining those as a priority. Now, I understand Moyer Park has, it's not like it doesn't have value, it does. But I do think I wouldn't want to see us move away from the centralized facilities. Because I've talked to a number of people who comment on that, when they have more than one child, having them at multiple facilities, it's nice to have them centrally located. Plus you drop off one here, there, and then you go pick up, stuff for tomorrow's lunch, and it's all central. Moyer Park does not offer that. And it has some structural problems as far as going in and out of the place. So that's something to think of. I know that, I do get the sense that the city has always wanted to promote Moyer Park, but the community, I think, has a lot more attachment to the local downtown facilities.
Councillor Ray, then Councillor Popoff.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councillor Blissett. That's that balance between that there's value in centralized opportunities, kind of fits in maybe with transit and downtown. And then, and yet how can we also really maximize our value at Moyer? So yeah, I think there's value in that imbalance there for sure, if we can kind of maintain both. In looking to the future, one thing that I hope we could aspire to would be, how can we be a bit nimble? And I mean, for a city to be nimble, it's probably like 5 years. It's not super duper nimble, but like as populations shift. So for example, we've had some feedback from some folks who happen to live in a neighborhood where there's lots of young families, young kids. They have area designated as a park. Okay, well, how could we be nimble to, how could we work with those folks? So looking at opportunities for park equipment there. Now, of course, those families, those kids are going to grow up, and there may come a point where that neighborhood then doesn't have young kids. And whereas do we have other parks now where, yeah, maybe 10, 20 years ago, there were young kids there and now there isn't. So how do we be nimble as populations shift? And kind of around that same idea of being nimble, like where we have grant funded projects, like, okay, we can get grant funding for this. It provides community amenity X. Now that equipment is old, it needs to be replaced. Well, just maybe we can't replace it. Like maybe we have to say, hey, you know, that, I'm not talking big tickets, relatively small ticket kind of items. That was grant funded. If we can find another grant to replace it, great. But we don't necessarily expect that, oh, we will just automatically add that on to what we do forever. You know, so kind of those discussions about how are we nimble, and also that really have good conversations about return on investment. I think that kind of ties into what Councillor Peabody was saying around, yeah, those amenities that anybody can use at any time. You kind of get a sense that you're probably going to get a pretty good return on investment because they're really accessible. So yeah, how can we be nimble, and how can we really think about return on investment?
Councillor Popoff.
If I could just maybe jump in, please. So when you say return on investment there, I think you're referring to the social benefit as well as the economic benefit then? Okay, thank you.
This end of town, all the way northwest. To put Moyer Park more so in the center of our community than it would have been 10, 15 years ago with the population on this side. We fought long and hard to get the soccer sports dome right downtown. That was a huge effort of council to come to that agreement. And it needs to be downtown because winter use, you don't want to be driving out into the hinterlands in the wintertime where there's poor accessibility and everything else, i.e. Moyer Park. But for winter activities, our aquatic facilities, our ice rinks, our indoor facilities need to be right down here. So I think it's what's central for the population, what's the seasonality of where we need to build our recreation facilities. So when it comes to sports fields, soccer, baseball, pickleball, you want some skating boards, expand our skating boards. Maybe those need to be downtown, but the big sports fields, there's no space for the downtown here. And we need to move that and build that over time up at Moyer Park. As the population shifting, it's just a quick bicycle ride for our kids that live up there. So I think that's where the population is shifting, and we have the room there. We have the room there to build first-class facilities. And when we look at our beloved Kinsman quad ball fields, which I was a Kinsman member, I think it's time to repurpose that property and replace that quad ballpark up at Moyer. Still call it Kinsman, but and drive our field sports up there, because that's the population shift. And if we could do something better with that 13 acres right downtown and get maybe the developer to help reposition that ballpark, that's a win-win to our community and our sports players.
Thank you, Councillor Popoff. You've been waiting for that one for a while. I get. Yeah. And I guess one final thought, again, I know in Calgary, they're starting to do this quite a bit. And of course, it's all about neighborhoods, you know, because Calgary's, you know, so spread out and whatnot. But a lot of the schools are being used, you know, rec programs for basketball, volleyball, youth stuff. from what I understand, they're busy all weekend, and in the evening. So I don't know if we're at a point in time we want to consider that, certainly the indoor stuff through the winter, it does make sense. I don't think that, all the schools we have in Cranbrook, the gymnasium are busy all winter long, and in the summertime, we should be looking at what they have for field, because they're not keeping they're having a lot of difficulty keeping their fields up as well. And maybe, we could come some kind of an agreement and kind of split the maintenance on that as well. Yes, you can have many more if you like, Councillor Ray.
It's the other Councillor Blissett. When we're talking about partnerships with nonprofits, whether they're current partnerships or new partnerships, I think that's a really, really important topic and important strategy. I think sometimes in the past, there's maybe been a perception in the nonprofit sector that the city might have a perspective, and then it's sort of been a feeling that the city is right, and that if the nonprofit has a different perspective, that the nonprofit is wrong. So when we're exploring these partnerships with nonprofits, I think we just have to make sure we come to the table that it's a equal footing and it's a dialogue, and that we really listen to each other. And I just think that's going to be really important. And I think we've gotten there with a number of these projects, and that's great. But I just think that's really important to keep in mind. Like, we as folks at the city, who we may have one opinion or a variety of opinions, but I think we just really have to be respectful, and we're valuing what nonprofits bring to the table. So we have to accept and embrace that they may have different perspectives, and how can we listen to each other and work together.
Thank you for that. That's really important. Yeah, going forward for sure. Relationships, certainly we know, and let's put it on the table, the KISA thing, the drama involved in that, that was way beyond what a municipality or a council should ever been involved in. So that's a lesson learned for sure.
Thank you very much for that. We'll just move on to the next question here. I'll just read it again quickly. Recreation and culture services provided by the city can generate significant community benefits. These services are supported by property tax revenue in order to keep user fees low enough to encourage participation. And please indicate where you think the city should land in terms of paying for services through property taxes or through user fees, and that kind of on the continuum towards public accessibility and cost recovery on the other side.
Councillor Popoff.
Thank you, Mayor. I can't answer that question until I know where we currently are.
Sorry, where the what?
Where are we right now on our public accessibility cost recovery? Where is our position right now? I can't comment until I have that data before us.
I can maybe interject here a little bit. It's no secret right now that, that we got rid of the user fee that we had. So really, to put it to our staff right now, what is it? Really, it doesn't matter what numbers they bring you. They're not realistic numbers, okay, that represent the community. So certainly, I think that the mayor and administration have to have a conversation with the regional district. So for the consultants, the regional district area C, which is within 5K pretty much around the city of Cranbrook boundary, they represent 20% of the population. So we're 21,000, they're 6,000. We do not receive any agreed upon revenues from them. So when you look at our costs, so it's very difficult. So we're bearing the cost for 26,000 people, 21. So the taxpayers representing 21,000 are paying the taxes for for the use of 26. So, until we break those down, and I really think It's either, you know, it's time for the regional district to pay the share or there's going to be, and let's be honest, the user fees we had before, they didn't serve much of a purpose. And Chris probably could remember back in those days, it was ridiculous. So, you know, if you're going to put user fees in, I don't even know how you do that anymore because they'd be so severe, you know, people, the residents wouldn't be able to use our facilities, let's be honest. So we do have to come to some kind of agreement, you know, on a taxable formula for that. So, yeah. But yeah, I know last time I looked, it was just on the, it was a while back, just our operational costs are over $6 million now, you know, and, you know, for the buildings in the fields, that's, you know, that's no capital projects and no debt servicing on that. So it's significant, you know. Yeah, and especially when you consider, and when we're talking about this cost recovery, a lot of people don't realize, you know, it's what this year $335,000 or $335,000 is 1% of our tax levy. So that's pretty significant when you look at the Area C implications. So, you know, our recovery versus our public accessibility, maybe we could have the same level or more public accessibility if in fact we're getting that level of cost recovery. So, right. Yeah. Councilor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Curious how you see the equation working for this, because obviously now we have some facilities like the pool and the hockey rinks that take a lot of staffing, a lot of resources to operate those that are quite expensive, and to recover, you know, the cost through user fees is just not possible. Then you have other facilities like, you know, our soccer fields and baseball diamonds that, you know, have a lot of users, but the maintenance is relatively low and you don't need full-time staff to be out there. So like to me, to break it down is like, you know, the cost recovery for this ball diamonds would be different than the cost recovery for the pool or the hockey rinks. So are we looking for like one level percentage for each group? Is that best practice, or to make the soccer players pay more to offset the people that are going to the pool? Well, what's the best practice?
That every community is different in that regard, right? It's really about understanding what the values of the community are. I mean, we certainly have best practices in terms of benchmarks of cost recovery by population size. I mean, it's much harder for this community to have a high cost recovery than a community that might have triple the population within the trading area, for example. Like there's only so much that's realistic in terms of cost recovery. But it really does come down to what the values of the community are and where, you know, there was some comments earlier about what you want to kind of hang your hat on. What is it that the community wants to be known for? And that plays into it, right? It does play into it, and that those things should be part of your sort of evaluation process, and also should be reflective in your measures. And one of the aspects of this project is to establish some performance measures that everyone can hopefully live with, and that you can use on an annual basis as a bit of a check every year to see if you're achieving what you want to achieve.
Yeah. So, and I guess too, it's a matter of, are we trying to maximize the amount of people to be able to access these, recreation facilities, or are we trying to, maybe limit the amount of people that access facilities, but make more profit? Because there's going to be a level there where, you can make it free, and the pool will be packed, all day and every day, or you charge double what we're, charging right now, and you'll get, a quarter of the people, but maybe make the same amount of money as if you charge what we're currently charging. Like there's so many variables here that it's hard to just be like, yes, that's the way to do it. And that's the
yes. Well,
formula.
and I can say that, we've worked in communities that virtually charge very little. I mean, the cost recovery is almost nothing in some, especially remote communities. Others that have a very high expectation, 80, 90% cost recovery, maybe not on aquatics. Aquatics might be 50, 60.
Yeah.
But on field houses, ice and that kind of thing, 80 up to, you know, they try and strive for 100% cost recovery. So it's really a huge range and it does, it really depends on where you're at, where your facilities are at. And there's aging facilities here, their cost is pretty high to maintain. So there's a lot of factors that go into it.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to have a philosophical discussion about how important is that social value?
Yeah, it's a fine balance. Like obviously you want to recover as much cost as you possibly can, but you also want to keep it affordable that the greater majority of the community can afford to, access these facilities and be involved in the local sporting groups. So yeah, it's interesting. It's hard to say where I feel like we should sit. And I think a lot of it does depend on, how does Cranbrook compare to other communities? We can say we want to have more cost recovery for hockey rinks, but if we're twice as expensive as what Kimberly's paying or Fernie or any other close community, we're going to get a lot of backlash from our taxpayers that we're, charging too much. So, yeah, I can't say I really have an answer right now without, like what Councillor Popoff said, without seeing more data to see where we're at. But it is interesting.
Councillor Bissett?
Thank you. I do think where we are right now is that we're heavier on the public accessibility side and less on cost recovery. At least that's my impression from being involved in budgeting. I mean, certainly for sports facilities, but I would say for cultural activities, we're probably heavier on, I think we're heavier on the cost recovery side and less on public accessibility. And again, this is not based on cold hard facts, but my impression would be that much of our population would like to see adults pay closer to the cost of attending a concert, and would like to see that, the price for children to have swimming lessons is affordable. I think those are our values that but as I say, that's a gut reaction. That's not based on any kind of data. But I do think when it comes to, say, going to a concert, that most of us feel that, we should pay close to what it costs. There may be some businesses that support that and they subsidize it, and there is maybe some subsidy, but that we should be paying closer to the cost. But definitely for children's activities, we'd like to see that that's available to families. I also think that, now that I'm in the seniors realm, the seniors activities are really important. And for both physical and mental health. And those, I think, are also values that people want to see an active community. So I think in Cranbrook, the bias is probably in favor of the recreational side being more on the public accessibility side of that spectrum, and the cultural activities a little bit heavier on the cost recovery. But as I say, that's kind of a gut reaction. And I have friends that would complain about that too, that in the arts community, that Cranbrook's all just about sports and that arts are not well supported by the city. So it's kind of where we're at, I think.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm looking forward actually to the philosophical discussion with council, because that's an interesting point. You look in the community and, it's pretty diverse, what people's priorities or what they think, and we have come a long way. I'll tell you, the cultural representative in this community 15 years ago, it was barely there. And you know what? The burden was on them to grow it. The city really did not I don't think, back in the day, supported that well. We've come a long way. We've still got to do better for sure. But, just sitting at the table here, when you look at the 7 of us at the end of the day, when you have this discussion, we got a really good cross section of the community. So you'll be in for a little bit of a haymaker when we're doing that one. And going back to the 5-year and the 10-year expectations are, certainly, I think, as Councillor was saying, the seniors population, I really think that, 5 years from now, anybody 75 or older should have free access to anything in the city. And in 10 years, 80 years older should have free access. No, I'm just kidding you. I'm just speaking for myself. Councillor Ray.
Thank you. So kind of in line with this discussion around public accessibility and cost recovery, I think we've touched on it a couple times. Like, it sounds like there's a lot of interest around the table in, like, yeah, what is our current data? So that'll be really interesting if that can be part of the outcome of this project, is to give us a better understanding of what our current situation is. That would be like really valuable. And the other thing I'm thinking is also the surrounding area. So with our situation with the Memorial Arena this year, of course, we're very fortunate that we've been, for hockey players, been able, and figure skaters, been able to access ice time in neighboring communities. So Marysville Arena, Kimberley Civic Center, Canal Flats. So those are our neighbors, and we just need to be aware what they're going to be charging for ice time. If we don't want to accidentally charge ourselves out of the market, where people do the math and say, you know what, it's worth it for me to drive somewhere else for ice because it's that much cheaper. So we just need to be aware, I think, of the ecosystem. And I'm sure all the communities are thinking the same thing. Interestingly, I think Canal Flats is a going concern with teams coming from Calgary, because they've done the math, and it is worth it to them to come to Canal Flats or Marysville to play hockey from Calgary rather than pay for Calgary ice time. So that's just part of those equations, right? So it'll be, yeah, if one outcome of this project can be, we have a better understanding of our current pricing and costs, that would be really, really helpful and help us make decisions for the future.
Good point. Actually, I had lunch today with the mayor of Canal Flats. They have a tournament every weekend in the Canal Flats Arena, and they're all basically Alberta teams that are coming in. So that's really, when you think about it, and I kind of think about that, and I think, yeah, Moyer Park's a long way to go in Cranbrook, but no, but that's the cost. I forget what it costs a year to play hockey, and put a kid in hockey in Calgary now. It's absolutely crazy.
Okay.
Back to you, John.
Thank you. So the last question of our session today is kind of the bit of a catch-all. If the Recreation and Culture Service Review could achieve one thing, what would be that most important thing for, I guess, each councillor?
Start with Councillor Popoff.
Yeah, sure, and thank you. And Mayor Price already said it, and I've said it before. We can't claim to be the tournament capital of Canada, but we can certainly strive to be the events capital of the Kootenays. And that means what we're currently doing directly as a city. And then how can we, the city staff, in conjunction with Cranbrook Tourism and maybe other partners, help enable, support various organizations to put on more events. I don't care, another agility dog show up at Moyer Park, or more soccer tournaments in the wintertime at the Sports Dome, or other events that we can help enable and support in conjunction with Cranbrook Tourism Board and others, to become the true events capital, diverse events capital of the Kootenays.
Thank you.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you. I would echo Councillor Popoff's comments on that. I think, there's value for community members to have diverse events in our community in terms of attending them, but also then, yeah, that economic development aspect, the value the economic spin-offs from sports tournaments, from concerts, all those things. So I agree. I think that's really important. For me, one thing, if we can help create the foundation for long-term planning and visioning in concert with our asset management work, I think that would be invaluable for our community. So if we can really get a good start on that, I think that would be very, very positive.
Thank you. Councilor Bissett.
It's been touched on before, but getting an accurate picture of how much it is costing us to provide these services. And then once we have that, then I think there's a zone around that that we could increase our cost recovery possibly from that. You know, and so that would really help council to make the decisions on that. And then I also think we need to be looking at I mean, I'm not sure what that, I think for culture, that's quite a variable figure. I'm not sure that we have that for cultural events. But I think we should be able to do that for the city recreation that is being provided. And if there is, I mean, you guys would have a better idea of this than us, but you know, what are the future trends in recreation? I mean, looking at our population, we have an aging population. We are, you know, a seniors heavy community. And so that affects our recreation and, you know, like pickleball and also the curling and the pool. It affects everything. Less so baseball. That's pretty hard on older people to do. Yeah, really, really slow pitch. But anyways, yeah, so that kind of information about sort of future trends and that would be helpful as well.
Councilor Peabody.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to get a better understanding of where we should be focusing our staffing resources and our financial resources. You know, there could be some things that we are spending a lot of money on, a lot of time on, that really, you know, maybe aren't necessary in our community anymore. I think there might be some facilities that we might be able to share with our neighboring community. I'm going to move away from Norma here, like possibly the curling rink. We could share that with Kimberly. If there might be enough users between the two communities to facilitate, you know, to fill up one facility, but not both.
Just a second, based on data, which there actually are they work together and they do have both have strong clubs.
Perfect.
So there you go.
Yeah, I guess where are our gaps and what services do we need that we don't currently have? There's been a lot of demand for indoor basketball facilities. I'm sure there is for volleyball. Lacrosse is asked for indoor facilities. Gymnastics club. This might be more of a 15 to 20 year goal, but maybe a multi-use facility that, you know, does fill those gaps that currently aren't being filled. And then, yeah, I think lastly is how do we maximize our profits while still keeping it attainable for the general public? That's a big one.
Thank you. I look at the budgetary challenges that its council and the corporation's got over the next several years. So I think my primary consideration would be to determine what service level we can afford. You know, there's a nice to have, and there's what we can afford. And again, I guess we might need some data. Everybody agree on data? Yeah, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we will need some data to determine that, let's be honest. And I think once we get some data, you know, we can look possibly, you know what, if we think we're overpaying something on this side, that's decisions that we have to make. Certainly, there could be other revenues. We talk about the regional district. What is, you know, what is that impact going to have? So I don't think we can even really balance our service level right now until, and it's unfair. We need the data. We need a little bit more financial data for sure. But I really think that this council sometimes, well, over the next couple of years, you know, I think some of the messages we're going to have out there, some people in the community aren't going to like it. Okay, it's not going to be the message they want to hear, but you know what? That's the message that, you know, that we have to bear. Our financial situation is not the greatest right now, and we have to work within our means, and, you know, so that does make it tough. Saying that, I think that certainly, certainly on the, I guess even the, you know, the cultural side and then, and the rec side, I guess there is opportunity, you know, to increase those revenues. I really believe that. So, yeah. And again, I guess, secondly, I really do think we need an identity. I think that's important. You know, most communities, you know, that are, yeah, I remember when I was a young guy, Trail had that sports identity, or, you know, and so, yeah, that seems to stand out. Thank you. Councilor Ray?
Thank you. I mean, could achieve one thing. Oh, this will be like, you know, number 3, 4, 5. But anyways, so yeah, we've mentioned data a lot. So clearly that's important. So as the mayor mentioned, you know, probably most of us don't think of that gymnastics serves like 800, 900 kids and youth, and now also seniors. They have a seniors program. So to have that data on kind of different user groups, like if we can get estimates on, yeah, what's the trail use like? Here's the gymnastics numbers. What are the pickleball numbers like? Like it's pretty significant, right? You know, and because I think we might have predetermined ideas, or hockey's really visible because so we all know about hockey, but I don't know how many kids play lacrosse. Lacrosse is very active. So to have those kinds of numbers. Also to keep in mind with that in mind as well, like equity seeking groups. So just because something's always been that way, if we look at it now with an equity lens, is that the way we want to continue, right? So yeah, I think so that's another lens to use, whether that's around gender or heritage or age or however that looks. Could it be a variety of those things? I agree fully with, you know, we need to talk about what can we afford in terms of finances. I think, though, we also have some human capital that we can use, the knowledge that we have among our team in terms of finding innovative and creative solutions and looking at partnerships. I just think that's so key, where we might be able to shift where in decades past, I think towns and cities were the doer. It was, if the city or the town didn't do it, it didn't happen. But I don't think that's our situation anymore. We've got this very vibrant nonprofit sector doing lots of different activities. So how can we shift in some cases, not in all, from being the doer to being the facilitator and the connector? How can we help other groups make things happen? And it's not us doing it, but it's us making connections, connecting resources, providing some help. So I think it's a little bit of just a shift in mindset, I think, about what municipalities, how we can approach this.
Further? Councilor Bissett?
Just off the top of my head, when you were talking, I was thinking about golf. I mean, that's always been a big, quite accessible in Cranbrook. There's a number of golf clubs. I mean, I was told that, you know, they're kind of competing with each other as far as membership goes. I know it's a real draw for a lot of people. So I don't know if that's being looked at in this at all as part of the picture. I mean, it's not, well, there is the city golf course, but that certainly is a big part of summer recreation for a lot of people.
Right.
I just saw that, I don't know. I mean, it's not part of my world, but.
Councilor Popoff?
I've been thinking about this and I'll just throw it out. Should the city in partnership with private or nonprofit be thinking long-term about a much-needed community center? Would that be part of this discussion?
So in terms of the scope of the project, we intentionally, like in the survey, if you took the survey, you know, we didn't ask a lot about facilities. It's about operations, programming, service delivery, efficiency, effectiveness. So I just wanted to, yeah, in terms of like, you know, what facility might be built and what are the needs for that facility and in what location, over what time period, that's really, in my understanding, not in the scope of this. It's more operational. And I think the interest is there. I mean, even from the public, we heard through the survey responses, even though we didn't ask a lot of questions about facilities, people told us about facilities. So that, you know, you'll hear some response around that. And I think that's where minds automatically go. And I think you folks have almost wrote a recreation master plan here in the last hour or so. So, but we will be keeping the focus on that ops, and you know, we can't exclude the facility discussion because they're linked. But it's not like a long-term plan for facilities.
Okay. I got two quick questions. I guess February 21st and 27th for the community input. What's that going to look like?
There will be a presentation similar to this one, a short presentation describing the project and the inputs, and then a few questions similar to this, a little bit different question line, but it'll be a group discussion around getting responses to those.
Okay, and draft report, do we have a timeline for a draft report?
Yes. When did we land on for that? We're about 6 months out from that. 4 to 6 months.
Pardon me?
Mayor
Ball-
Price,
ballpark.
we're looking at May for a draft and June for a final is the.
Well, good stuff.
Thank you, Trevor. Thanks, Chris.
Councilor Bissett.
Sorry, even when I was filling out the form, I didn't think about our biking trails. And that is a huge part of recreation for our community. Well, first of all, the whole mountain biking side. And then also the Rails to Trails has been a game changer in Cranbrook. So I'm not sure if that is part of your master plan as well. I mean, it certainly is part of, it's a draw for Cranbrook. And we do offer a certain aspect of mountain biking, if I'm correct. I mean, it's not the steep and deep like at Fernie or say Rossland, but there's real merit for a lot of people in early season, especially mountain biking. And I can't really talk about, my husband would be killing me for what I'm saying because I'm not describing it properly, but it's like, no, it's quite valuable to our community and it's a draw. And so is the road riding as far as that rails trails goes, because many people don't want to ride on roads, but they want a paved surface. So is that part of the plan too, or just on the periphery?
I see that as maybe more Cranbrook tourism, you know, promoting that more so. Yeah.
So Mayor Price, it is part of the overall analysis of rec and culture in the town. And that's why we can't stress the survey enough. So people that are taking the survey are taking it from their own mindset. So that's why it needs to be a diverse, everybody needs to take part in it. Even if you aren't part of a hockey club or a soccer team, or you don't ride mountain bikes. So we capture all aspects of it.
Councilor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm on the Cranbrook Tourism Board, and we do have some really good data on bicycles and all other types of tourism, including culture. So it might be good to talk to the executive director there.
Thank you.
And Chris New has a comment or a question in the back there.
A reminder that our existing master plan ends in 2 years. So where the master plan process we'll dig a lot more into the facilities and exactly those things. This will be a nice little kind of transition. Oh, sorry. This will be a nice transition, this report, to kind of build on for the next master plan. Hopefully that we'll be doing in a couple of years.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Good point. Councilor Papa.
Thank you, Mayor. Way back, Chris just reminded me, way back when he was still an employee, he was working on the Elizabeth Lake Master Plan, and I think it's been on a timeout right now. I'm not sure what the status of it is, but I think if we're looking at, it might be something to once we have this data, bring that back again. I don't know what the timing or where it would fit, but it's a valuable piece of recreation out there and tourism value that I don't think is really being talked about right now or in our current planning, so.
Further? Anything further from anybody in the gallery there? Justin, comment?
Not for me. Thank you very much for your information today. It'll certainly help inform our discussions moving forward.
Well, thank you, Justin, and we're certainly looking to being part of the process here and the end result, the final report. It's been a long time coming, I think it is going to be a great tool for council moving forward. So thank you very much for the presentation. Great presentation and great Q&A here. So thank you. And with that, I'll get a motion to adjourn the meeting. Councillor Peabody, Councillor Brissette. I was going to call you Councillor just to kind of even it up today. All in favor? Opposed? Adjourned.